So what is data equity? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I can look at it and tell you that it has to do with bias. But we're going to talk to Karen Borjgevnik, who's going to give us the 101, and then we're going to learn about how this impacts our lives. One of the things I love doing with people who are smart and know what they're talking about is to get into a conversation where we really go to the edges of their knowledge so we can go to tomorrow and see, okay, what are we doing today and how's this going to impact tomorrow? And the reason I think that's important when it comes to people, especially in a digital wellness space, is we have to start really turning those corners if we can, peeking around and anticipate problems. Because with AI and with data, it can get ahead of us and systems become entrenched and we can't change things. So today I want to talk to Karen about what can we do to make sure things don't go wrong. And I think that's why LA Tech for Good is an organization. And I know that they're expanding to be a national organization. So we'll learn about that. But Karen, thank you for walking us through this. So it's my understanding that code can be discriminatory, actual code. So code that's in healthcare, that's in housing, code that recognizes faces. These are all things that create algorithms and data sets that make for a miserable life for people if they're on the other side of it, if they're not considered, if they're marginalized because of bad code, bad data. Can you walk us through your protocols to do assessments, the audit? How do you know if there is data inequity? And welcome to Swell, by the way. I'm really happy you're here.
Hi, Deborah. It's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I like this format, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about data equity and get beyond what might seem like jargon a bit. You covered a lot in your intro, and so I think I want to start with right at the very top, what's the problem here, and why do we consider data equity as a solution or at least one methodology to address data in today's world. Starting with the problem, I imagine that most of your listeners are familiar with harm inflicted by data. And you mentioned three of the biggest issue areas: healthcare, housing, and facial recognition. But I do want to speak to this for a minute because most of big data and its consequences are actually hidden from us, for most of us. I want to reference some new explainer videos by Consumer Reports called Bad Input that illustrate problems in those three areas. You can find that at consumerreports.org/bad input. A couple other instances that I think are pretty stark, specifically in terms of data. When COVID came along, Native people in this country were classified as other because their numbers were small, because they were, not visible in somebody's world. And Abigail Echo Hawk of the Seattle Indian Health Board said it pretty clearly. We are a small population of people because of genocide, for no other reason. If you eliminate us in the data, we don't exist. We don't exist for the allocations of resources. And I think we all saw the consequences of COVID on Native peoples was super extreme, and data had a part, or lack of data had a part to play in that. On facial recognition, several black men have been arrested and sent to jail because of inaccurate software algorithms. I'll also add that giant databases of faces are being created on the southern border, both to control immigrants and clearly with the intention to extend to other populations now or in the future. And of course, something as simple as the gender drop downs for male and female, they are still super prevalent. We're going into Gay Pride Month, and they are inaccurate for so many individuals who don't fit into these binary classifications, as much as some people would like to stuff them into those bags. So, second piece here I'd like to speak to is, so what is data equity and how can it address these problems? Our go-to is a phrase from a book called Data Feminism. It's a great resource. The authors there state, equity is both an outcome and a process. And I think that is worth thinking about, letting it sit for a minute. Equity is both an outcome and a process. You can't get there from here. This is the concept that we start from as we define data equity. So we think data equity has two sides to it. It should be built into the entire data lifecycle, from the first phases of problem definition and data collection through the final framing of results. In other words, you need to start your data from the beginning with an equity lens. And one of our favorite tools that we continually promote, and it's a cherished tool actually, is data sheets for data sets by Dr. Timnit Gebru and others. Really a practical working document for people who are hands-on with data. And the second piece of that dynamic is that data can and should contribute towards equitable outcomes and not cause harm. So that's the end result. That's the outcome piece. As an example of equity as a process might mean, for an example, we got a great blog post on our website about this. It might mean identifying all the stakeholders who use a city park so that planning can be done equitably and based on their needs. That's a pretty long list. Kids, commuters, urban planners, city workers, maintenance people, athletes, unhoused, and a whole lot more. But really I was convinced I wasn't going to go over the 5-minute limit. So back to data, two sides of data equity, building it into the whole data lifecycle and contributing towards equitable outcomes and not causing harm. So back to this park, lots of stakeholders. This is the perspective around that. People in a community know its problems intimately, and they know which phenomenon go uncounted, underreported, or neglected by institutions in power, or conversely, what is overly surveilled by institutions in power. Write the authors of Data Feminism. The metrics we decide to include or exclude and our proximity to the design, problem spaces, and communities will have a tremendous impact on what can be accomplished. So that is the outcomes. We need to bring the equity into the entire life cycle so that the outcomes can be fair and just. That's all. Bye.
Karen, that was so much. It was so good. Wow. Okay. So I'd love to follow up with another question because I know there's different phases at which people work to inoculate their system with this awareness so that systemically things, like you said, things rot from the top and rot from the bottom in a way. Like we have to make sure all parties are aware of the goals of equitable data when it starts at the source. So for consumers, let's go to consumers because a lot of people here are not in the tech space per se. They're not creating code. They might be working in companies that do, but let's talk about the consumer participation in this and our awareness of it. The more we say, "Oh my God, this is so unfair. I can't believe this happened," and they're outraged. There's no place they can go because it's already water under the bridge. They can't go to a legislator. They don't know what they're doing. They can't go to the company probably because the company will probably not hold themselves accountable. But is there a consumer watch program where people can say, I might be experiencing data inequity. This is my story. And is there like a way to report it? Like they have Better Business Bureau. Can we report when we experience something that clearly is because of a bad process, I'm using the word bad in such a layperson's term, but you know what I mean? Like what does a consumer do when they realize this is happening to them?
I love that question, Deborah. And I definitely agree with you. We can't be waiting around for politicians to solve some of this stuff. The place that I would direct people is to the Algorithmic Justice League, AJL.org. They have a campaign to report and give people the opportunity to report harm caused by biased algorithms. They recently gave an award to Robert Williams, who was arrested and held in front of his wife and daughters and held for 30 hours through incorrect facial recognition software in a shoplifting case. So AJL, awarded actually Mr. Williams with a what would you call it? Award, a commendation for speaking up and making this known, because I think a lot of it does go undocumented, unexposed. There was a case, and AJL was also involved in this, probably like 5 years ago, in a Brooklyn housing unit where facial recognition software was being used, was implemented to, instead of keys, so that residents had to go through a face scanner to get into their apartment buildings. And that is documented in the Coded Bias documentary that is about AJL and about Dr. Joy Buolamwini, who founded the organization. Anyway, that group of tenants in Brooklyn protested and basically said, my face is not a key, my face is not a passport. And they were able to force that apartment owner to back down on that. So that's all in the movie Coded Bias, which is on Netflix. Super encourage people to watch that. But this whole idea of documenting the bias that takes place, I think, is something that's really important, and I really have a lot of respect for Algorithmic Justice League for the work that they do there. That's where I would send people. That's my number one go-to. Yep.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to post that right now in this description so people can get to it. I watched Coded Bias. It blew my mind. And it reminds me that I need to, I think I didn't finish it, so I'm going to actually do it in second reply here to link Coded Bias so people know where to find that. And let's see if some new voices come in. Thank you for being here and just helping us understand this, because I want people to sort of marinate on this whole concept that, code is written by people mostly. I mean, now it's written by AI, of course. Oh, that's a question I have for you. When AI writes code, which it does now, how do we put awareness into that code? Because it's written by AI, which is in itself biased. Oh my God, it's like a house of mirrors. And here's that link to the amazing film called Coded Bias.